Luna Park Tragedy. The Luna Park Ghost Train fire of June 9, 1979 is a story that still sends shivers down our spines. 7 innocent souls lost their lives that fateful day. But what caused the fire? Was it really just an electrical malfunction, or was something more sinister at play? Some believe that there was corporate corruption and negligence involved, while others think that the fire was deliberate and an underground criminal activity was to blame. But what really happened on that night of terror? Let's uncover the bone-chilling truth. The Luna Park Sydney is a heritage-listed amusement park owned by the Luna Park Reserve Trust, which is an agency of the Government of New South Wales, and it's got some seriously spooky attractions, like the Big Dipper 3 roller coaster and the infamous Ghost Train. Now, the Ghost Train was designed to give riders an eerie and creepy experience, and it did just that. The ride was built in 1931 and had been entertaining thrill seekers ever since. The walls were lined with dancing skeletons, ape monsters, and all sorts of scary figures. There was even a warning before the ride started. There are a lot of ghosts in here. You'll shiver and quake in the ghost town. And with complete darkness for about 2.5 minutes, the atmosphere was undeniably eerie. But on June 9th, 1979, everything changed. Up to 35 people boarded the Ghost Train as usual, expecting a terrifying but safe ride. However, some guests began to perceive smoke and noticed strange characteristics of fire, but they brushed it off as part of the ride's special effects. It wasn't until black clouds of smoke started rising out of the entrance and exit that people realized something was wrong. What started out as a fun day turned into a nightmare that nobody could have predicted. The staff at the park made a critical error when they neglected to turn off the ride, which ended up starting the fire. The emergency services had a tough time putting out the flames due to the low water pressure and had to resort to using water from the harbor. Can you imagine how terrifying it must have been for the people stuck on the ride, with the fire spreading so quickly around them? Despite their best efforts, the fire service was too late to save 7 people who had already escaped from the ride. They had made the fatal mistake of leaving their vehicles in search of an exit. If only they had stayed put, they would have been rescued by the ride attendant. The loss of life was truly devastating, especially for the families of the 4 13-year-old students of Waverley College Junior School: Jonathan Billings, Richard Carroll, Michael Johnson, and Seamus Riley. The cause of the fire is still heavily debated to this day, but it's clear that the park was warned of the fire risk years before. They were given plenty of time to make the necessary changes to prevent such a tragedy from happening. But despite the warnings, did they take the necessary safety measures? No. The officials investigated and determined that Luna Park had failed in its duty of care to patrons. However, it wasn't severe enough to support a charge of criminal negligence. But is that really the truth? The investigation results had so many loose ends, and there were claims by witnesses that the fire was a deliberate case of arson. But why would someone intentionally set a fire at Luna Park? Richard Visser, one of the eyewitnesses, recalled smelling kerosene while on the ride that night. According to him, kerosene was widely used as a fire accelerant and was the leading perpetrator in intentional fires. He wanted to speak to the police the next day and tell them about the kerosene, but he was discouraged by the actions of the officer in charge. Can you believe it? What's even more shocking is the fact that Inspector Doug Knight, the officer in charge of the investigation, was a corrupt fixer. It was revealed in a recent documentary, Exposed, that he accepted bribes from criminals to manipulate the investigation. If that's the case, then what really happened at Luna Park that night? The witnesses all reported seeing a suspicious group of bikers at the park that night. Some independent researchers have theorized that a notorious crime boss, Abraham Gilbert Saffron, paid the bikers to start the fire and then had Inspector Doug Knight cover it up. It's said that Saffron did this because he wanted the park's real estate for himself. If that's the truth, there's something a lot more sinister going on in New South Wales. It's clear that there were two tragedies that night. The first was the fire itself, and the second tragedy was the failed investigation. What do you think was the cause of the fire that tragically killed those 7 innocent souls? Let us know in the comments.